Greetings world, we are anonymous.
Citizens of the world. In an information war, the tool that is counterintelligence is crucial to fight against the enemy's psychological operations, and ours is without flaws, and our record speaks for itself. The off-circuit security teams are very close to a 100% accuracy track record, so we will now bring you the truth about the Wagner events. We are anonymous. And the problem with Wagner, even the name causes me to cringe. Why not Tchaikovsky? Western, CIA-controlled Russian media, which I have been exposing for decades. The Western, CIA business structure that was forced onto the former USSR, the Western, CIA model of the Internet, the Western/Rothschild/CIA economic system, and all of the attributes of the West that were forced onto the former Soviet Union by CIA-recruited America-loving sycophants, bandits, mafia and megalomaniac lunatics ready to sell out their country. Is that, like it or not, they are instruments of the very West, CIA we are at war with, as was planned by the CIA architects, a long drawn-out low-intensity conflict. In this regard, it is important to note and remember that even the former and first president of the Russia Federation was a documented, proven and openly admitted CIA agent. An agent who after his presidency was allowed to keep his money and power and continue to live a peaceful life and be active in the political processes and the media of the Russian state. This is where the departure from what should be normal, one might say, begins, and this is important in understanding the fact and dealing with the reality, that we no longer live in what is a normal world. We now live in a CIA black operations world, where truth is almost non-existent and where now there is almost no one fighting for the truth or truly exposing the truth. We live in a world where the media, journalism and even transparency organizations are all compromised to serve the CIA and the West in general, and a world run by a mafia of elites whose only interest is maintaining their power and wealth. That is a global problem, and it is a serious problem in the Russian world, and is one that has to be dealt with if Russia is ever going to be a truly sovereign nation, as the president has stated is the goal. It is understandable why Eric Prince and Greystone/Academy/11/Blackwater/Frontier Services Group, or whatever they are calling themselves now, are needed by the CIA and the US government. In their mockery of democracy, the US government and the CIA need organizations to carry out their black operations worldwide, operations occurring at levels that no other country in the world is doing as they continue to attempt to rule the world. Again, that is all understandable. Eric Prince has even compromised Chinese security by opening what is called the International Security Defense College in Beijing itself, as under the aegis of security. Remember how the CIA/State Department even openly used one of their security certificate holders to infiltrate and take over the Russian media. Dmitry Kiselev. The CIA infiltrates and takes over governments by using training to learn about and be able to neutralize and compromise all sovereign security tactics and structures. So the structure's motivation, players and logic of the empire of lies is clear. If it is not for you, do a little research, which leads us to Prigozhin and the question as to why a private military company was needed in Russia. The answer to that, for the most part, is that it wasn't but after Eric Prince attempted to infiltrate the Russian military structures and access Russian wealth to pay for it, Russian businessman Prigozhin appeared, as apparently the privatization and capitalistic selling of military services was seen as another Western institution that those in power thought would fly in Russia, with of course the lucre that was to be had. Russia is a country with mandatory military service and conscription, so manpower issues are not a problem, nor is transparency or secrecy, unlike in the USA. So the only reason for a private military company in Russia is either self-profit or black operations so secret that the MOD, the FSB and SVR cannot be trusted with them. given the Wagner's operations and what is known all of the players, the scales tilt towards the former, and given the makeup of the Wagner forces, in particular the large number of felons and criminals, the scales further tip away from the latter to a point, with only the expendable nature of criminals tipping the scales towards the latter. However, after the events of the 24th of June, it is clear that either Prigozhin is not in control of Wagner, or Wagner and Prigozhin are in fact another instrument in the CIA toolbox inside Russia proper. Again, however, given that Prigozhin is still alive, if he in fact is, then his being a CIA asset is not likely. So far we have no credible information that he is in fact still among the living. Reports that Prigozhin is in exile in Belarus, if true, point to the fact that it was in fact one of his lieutenants who organized what was to be the armed military takeover of Russia, an event as mentioned above, that the CIA was ready to pay $680 million for. Also, even more important is the fact that the FSB rescinded the charges against Prigozhin. No matter the actual perpetrators, the fact of the matter is that Russia has a serious problem with its fifth column. In this regard, statements by the CIA that they knew about it days in advance point not to Prigozhin, as the CIA would like you to believe, but to moles that they have inside Wagner. One positive intelligence-related point in all of this is that scores of CIA operatives and traitors to Russia exposed themselves everywhere, from inside Wagner to the media and even inside the Russian government, and that is a good thing, and it will help in part of the operations that needs to take place inside Russia proper, especially at the elite level and in the media. So what do we actually know? We know that there were reported strikes on a Wagner camp, we know that Wagner shot down a Russian military command center and a helicopter. We know that Wagner troops temporarily occupied a Ministry of Defense building in Rostov-on-the-Don. We know that approximately 1,500 Wagner military vehicles formed a convoy and headed for Moscow. We know that countermeasures were taken and the attempted armed takeover was stopped within hours. Other than that, everything is just speculation, and since we cannot trust the media anywhere, without an inside source, it is highly unlikely that we will ever know the entire story. But there are nuggets, and one of those is the makeup of Wagner's forces, which would be the most logical and simple explanation to what happened and explain the airstrikes and the events that followed. We know that Wagner's forces consisted of thousands of convicted criminals, and we know that these elements of society are not the most patriotic or trustworthy, to say the least. Most convicted criminals, especially those who were innocent, do not differentiate between the corrupt systems that put them in prison and the overall government and the president. Among these members of the Russian population, you would be very hard tried to find anyone who supports President Putin or the Russian government, which is understandable. Few of them have the education, knowledge or information to differentiate between corrupt elements and those in the government who are patriots and honest hard-working people. Therefore, convincing them that the only solution is overthrowing the government is quite simple, as people like Navalny and his CIA masters know. So in conclusion, until more verifiable facts come in, we can be assured that the CIA or MI6 want you to believe they were involved, given all of the public statements by their puppets in their Western information space. An expedient way to get rid of Prigozhin, who was up until now wiping out their Nazis by saying he was their agent, and that an attempt at an armed coup was quickly thwarted. If it was a black operation, then it was carried out against the true enemies of the Russian state, and regardless of all of the details, should serve as a wake-up call to the Muscovite elites and populace who are hopping around like Nazi puppets on the Maidan and treating the special operation as if it is some abstract political action that does not affect them, as they pretend to be patriots while not even having the common decency to show their support for Russian troops who are dying for them by even placing a simple Z sticker on their car. Yes, it is amazing that in Moscow, Russia and other regions the overall public does not deem it as necessary to support the Russian forces, and even today I am amazed by how few Zs I see on vehicles. Stunning actually. It is sad that all of the traitors that took part will not be prosecuted, and those responsible have not been hung in public to show the brainwashed liberals what happens to traitors. In any other country that would be the least that could be done, meaning a public punishment of such traitors and round-the-clock coverage of any possible CIA or other involvement. But this is post-liberal Russia, and unfortunately the 1990s CIA fifth column are still controlling levers they should have never been allowed to even come near. Helpfully, Operation Z-denazification will begin soon in Russia proper, and for all intents and purposes, it has already begun. We are anonymous. We are legion. We are many. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.